Late August, 30 degrees outside, great sunshine. We are at the peak hockey season, so that's why we're back. Marc-Antoine Godin with Harpin Basu on the Basu and Godin notebook. Hello, everybody, and welcome, Harpin. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We're in full summer mode, still in summer mode, but it's winding down for sure. Thought we'd check in. Had a little bit of news with Nick Suzuki holding court with us yesterday on Thursday. So here we are with another episode, and then to just wrap up a few of the things that happened while we were gone. Marc Antoine was on vacation first, and I was on vacation, and so it's been a few weeks since we've spoken to you all, and thought we should touch base with
That's
our
it.
loyal listeners. Absolutely. We see you in the chat, even though we haven't been participating. We see you wondering what's going on. Where are you guys? When are you going to come back? So here we are. Um, and as many of you noticed, we each wrote a story yesterday, so that was a sign that yes, indeed, we are on the way back. So we're not yet going to be back to regular programming. We're not going to be doing twice a week just yet, but it's
Slowly
coming
but
soon.
surely, yeah, we're
It's
ramping things up a little bit. Yeah,
Yes, it's coming soon. So training camp is not too far off in the distance. Rookie camp is even less far off in the distance. But we should start with Nick Suzuki, and this has become an annual thing. His work with the Assista Foundation, which is an organization that trains service dogs for people with mental health needs and organizations that help those people. And it's really a cause that he seems to hold dear. He's adopted a dog from them. Ruby, who's been the star of the last two editions of this thing. So I want to give, before we start talking the hockey stuff that Nick talked about yesterday, but just give some pub to the Assista Foundation. If you want to help it's assista.ca is their website. But yeah, this is always an excuse to get the pulse of what the captain's thinking about the upcoming season. A year ago, this happened 2 or 3 days after the Patrick Laine trade. So it was our first opportunity to get a chance to talk to him about what had just happened. This year, I think a decidedly different tone. You know, last year I think Nick was a little defiant in discussing what his expectations were for the season. Um, this year didn't feel the need to be overly defiant. You know, just quiet, confident, and just feeling good about what's going on around the team, even though some imperfections remain. But he seemed genuinely excited to get going and get off on the right foot this time.
well, he's the captain of this team, right? And he's 26 years old now, entering his seventh season in the NHL. That quiet confidence, I think that he's earned it. And the team around him also has provided him with signs that it's really heading in the right direction. So without without making promises that he could not keep or setting standards too high, although whenever we talk about expectations with players, they always say the same thing. No matter the expectations that the media or the fans set, ours are always higher. Nick said the same thing, said as much yesterday, and I believe him because last year that's exactly what we heard from the players. I think that there was still a great deal of suspicion regarding, the overall performance of the Montreal Canadiens, but the players
Mhm.
were adamant that they were ready to compete and be at least be as competitive as they ended up being. Let's put it this way. So yeah, so I thought that the captain was in a very good frame of mind. Excited that Noah Dobson is on board with the Montreal Canadiens. He learned about the trade
Dauber.
as he was returning from Joel Edmondson's wedding in Scotland. He
Hmm.
was with Cole Caulfield, and the two of them were super excited. So I think that that's a motivation, something to look forward for Suzuki and the Canadians, and we can touch on that a bit later. But I think that you were saying, well, training camps around the corner, rookie camps around the corner, but for Nick Suzuki and Noah Dobson in particular, and also I should add Samuel Montembeault, there's Team Canada's orientation camp that's coming up
Hmm.
next week. So they've been invited to take part in two different activities, including sort of some sort of a car wash, a media car wash for Team Canada ahead of the Olympics. Nothing's set in stone for either of those guys, um, but you look at the way things unfolded at the Four Nations. Obviously, a lot of talent in the top six, but I mean, you had guys like Anthony Cirelli and Sam Bennett centering the bottom two lines.
Hmm.
We know also that Nick Suzuki can easily play on the wing. You were right to point out to him, Arpin, that if he plays on the PK this year, uh, and he proves to be efficient in that role, as he did in the past, it should improve his chances too. So it's not the deepest. Well, there are very good centermen, don't get me wrong, on the Canadian team, but I think that if you want to really load up some offensive lines, you might end up having some centermen that will play on the wing on the top two lines, whether it's your Samurai Knights or your Nathan McKinnons or whatnot. And
Hmm.
there might be a spot for Nick Suzuki, if, and that's a big if, but if he shows that he can really continue on the trend that he had, in the last one third of the season, he finished so strong. But if he can pick up where he left off and show that he has established himself like an elite number one center in the league, he might still be a bit of a dark horse, but I still like his chances of getting a spot on that team.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember last season, like not only did the Canadians get off to a rough start, Nick Suzuki also got off to a difficult start to the season. Went through a stretch where he was not at his best. Marte St. Louis even mentioned, we need more out of Nick, and he was talking publicly how he wasn't happy with his game. Um, there's I think there's some interesting people at this camp that weren't at Four Nations, right? Obviously, you have Suzuki and Thomas, who are basically tied at the hip. Very similar players, right shots, 200-foot players, good offensively, had equally good post Four Nations performances. They have been competing against each other. They're both 99 born. They've been competing against each other in Ontario minor hockey circles forever. They've so I can't imagine both of them making the team. So I think if they're going to unseat someone who went to Four Nations, it's going to be either or. So, I talked to Robert Thomas about it in St. Louis. He's like, it's funny, I've been competing against this guy my whole life, and here I am again in the NHL, still competing with the same guy. And so, the other guy I look at, well, there's two guys that's relevant to both Suzuki and Thomas, and the penalty killing thing that you mentioned is Mark Scheifele, who did not get named to the Four Nations team, is a centerman, is not really a candidate to kill penalties, but is a high end offensive player. That could be in their way. Uh, and then there's the whole Tom Wilson
Right.
philosophy, I guess. Tom Wilson is invited to this camp. And there are other players who weren't at Four Nations who are at this camp, obviously, but to me, Tom Wilson is someone I could see this management team looking at and saying we can use a guy like, especially the way those games against the U.S. team played out at Four Nations. I can anticipate they're going to play out in a similar fashion at the Olympics with IHF referees. It's not going to be the same, but I could see this group convincing themselves, and Tom Wilson's a hell of a player. It's not like they're just bringing him in to goon it up, but 6'4", 225, a guy who can skate, a guy who has hands. And if it gets rough, having that in your back pocket, even if he's a 14th forward or whatever, just the option to put him in, I think is of great interest, would be of great interest to these guys. So it's going to be tough. There's other guys. Zach Hyman didn't make that team, and I could see him getting off to a great start and being like, say, okay, well, we could put him with McDavid, and that's a pairing right there, and we don't need to worry about it. So I think there's a lot of challenges for Suzuki and for really any of the guys who weren't on the team. But just to me, Wilson and Hyman, they're both wingers, so it shouldn't really impact Suzuki. necessarily, but it's just like how many guys are not going to go who went to Four Nations. And the other guy who would probably compete with Suzuki is Bo Horvat, who we've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, obviously, but is a centerman, would play a similar role, is also from London, Ontario, but more of a veteran guy and a bigger guy. So I have trouble seeing like I don't think John Cooper's going to Milan without Anthony Cirelli. Like, I just don't.
Yeah,
It's just not happening. So and the reality is that he has a lot of say in who's on this team. He's the coach. He has to decide who he plays in certain situations. He's going to take guys that he trusts. So, Point, Sorelli, and Hagel are pretty much locks, as close as you can get for me. I mean, Point's been named already, if I'm not mistaken. So, anyhow, but in terms of Hagel and Sorelli, um, so Sam Bennett, are they really not going to take him after he won the Conn Smythe Trophy, no matter how he starts the season?
yeah,
So it's gonna be tough. Like all of these guys, Horvat, Thomas, Suzuki, are gonna have to be at such a high level that they make it impossible for Canada to not take them. And
yeah,
that's the competition, I think, is those three guys trying to unseat one of Bennett or Sorelli, and it's a very high bar for them to clear. Like they're gonna have to really clear a high bar.
yeah. And we'll see how much. We'll see about Brad Marchand also. It depends because he looked great
Yeah,
in the playoffs. He did not look great at the Four Nations though. But people might be listening to us right now and say, "Well,
he's
why are
okay.
you talking about the Olympics right now? Well, the Canadians have not started their training camp just yet." Well, it's because when you talk about starting the season strong, this goes for Suzuki, for all those guys who are in competition with him, but
Mhm.
he goes for the Canadians too. And Nick Suzuki will set the tone for this team. And he's got a line mate in Uri Slavkovsky who is eager to really start the season at the right time and not get stuck into his head and wait too long until really he finds his game. He wants to be ready physically, he wants to be ready mentally from game one. The Canadians did had a superb second half of the season last year. They really turned the ship around. But the fact of the matter is that they dug themselves into a hole early on in the season, and they had to start playing playoff hockey pretty much after Christmas. And
Mhm.
so and it was admirable that they were able to manage to get a playoff spot out of it. But this is very draining, both mentally and physically. So you have a young group like them; they must learn to start the season on time and get points early on in the season. So I think it's the whole team that will want to have a strong start. And in that sense, I think that Nick Suzuki, when he told us, he said regarding the Olympics, it's a huge goal of mine this season. It's really on his mind. It's not as going to prioritize that over the Canadians, but one will help the other. That's for
Yeah.
sure. And Suzuki has shown us in the past that he's got an ability, even in his mid 20s, to continue getting better and better. There's still more, I think, for him to give and get into a different level. The level he's at right now, or that he's shown last year, is already extremely. It's, I would say, satisfying, but I think that it's inspiring for the rest of the team. But having this extra goal in mind, I think that it might getting into a new gear to start this season. And maybe the same will go for Noah Dobson, who's a dark horse candidate also for a spot on the back end. It might be even harder for Dobson to earn a spot than it is for Suzuki, considering
Yeah.
Evan Bouchard being a right-handed defenseman who was not at the Four Nations, who will be considered for his offensive ability. Um, who knows if Drew Doughty is going to be back? But
Who
I
knows
mean,
if
you got,
Pareko will be back? I know that Doug Armstrong is the GM, but Pareko is
yeah,
not a lock to go back either. And those
no,
those were, in terms of right side options, the problem for Bouchard and Dobson is when you have Kale McCarr on your team and he's basically going to take all the PP1 minutes, you know, do you really want Evan Bouchard on your team if he's playing on the second power play? Like it kind of seems like,
Yeah,
and
well, I look, he's a better offensive guy. McCarr's not going to be on the ice all the time, but I think that where it's the beginning of the season will be important for Dubson will be to show that okay, I might not be exactly Evan Bouchard offensively. I might be a notch below, but in terms of being trustworthy defensively and make sure that I limit my mistakes and that I can contain the opponent, I will show you during the first 3 months of the season that I'm a superior defender than Bouchard in that aspect of the game, and that you can trust me more. This is
and
where this is the area of the game where I think that Dobson can pass Bouchard, because if it's just a matter of racking up points,
mhm.
look, I don't think he's going to do it.